Yes.
3, 2, 1, go. Kicking it off, Thursday night game, Philadelphia 28, Carolina 23. Carson Wentz threw for 222 yards and 3 touchdowns, one of them to Nelson Aguilar and 2 to Zach Ertz. Cam Newton had a passing touchdown to Christian McCaffrey, who scored for the second straight game, but was picked off 3 times. McCaffrey's TD was one of 10 catches he had on the day, so if you've got him in PPR format, you're probably liking that trend. Kelvin Benjamin also had a solid 9 grabs for 99 yards. LeGarrette Blount carried 14 times for 67 for the Eagles. Alshon Jeffrey added 4 catches for 71 yards through the air. Biggest takeaway for me, the Panthers, other than Cam Newton, cannot run the football. Newton rushed 11 times for 71 yards and a score, while the rest of the Panthers running backs combined rushed 16 times for 9 yards. Questions moving forward. Is there going to be any clarity in that Philadelphia backfield anytime soon? Blount seems like the guy, but is he going to get enough carries to make him a viable, consistent fantasy starter?
Los Angeles Rams 27, Jacksonville 17. The key stat lines: Todd Gurley ran for 116 yards on 23 carries, while Leonard Fournette rushed 21 times for 130 yards, which included a whipping his dick out 75-yard touchdown run less than a minute into the game. Jared Goff passed for only 124 yards with 1 TD, while Blake Bortles passed for 241 yards, a touchdown and an interception. Special teams were king today as the Rams ran back a kick for a score and blocked a kick return for another. So good for you if you started the Rams defense and special teams units. Biggest takeaway, other than Fournette's 75-yard score, his stat line was a forgettable 20 runs for a measly 55 yards. Seems like there's no way Blake Bortles can lift this team to victory if competent teams stack the box against Leonard Fournette. Questions moving forward: can Jacksonville continue to be competitive with a great pass defense, a star running back, and nothing else? Doubtful, but they do play the Colts.
Houston 33, Cleveland 17. Deshaun Watson continued to make people who took a chance on him late in drafts look like geniuses, passing for a respectable 225 yards, another 3 touchdowns, and getting picked off once. The Browns had 10 different guys catch passes, but none of them did anything, although Seth Duvall, who did catch a touchdown pass from Cleveland signal caller Kevin Hogan. Sadly for Hogan, he also threw 3 interceptions. Biggest takeaway is Will Fuller's presence in the passing game for the Texans opens things up dramatically, as was evidenced last week against the Chiefs and also this week against the Browns. Although DeAndre Hopkins caught only 2 balls for 9 yards, he and Fuller, who caught 2 for 62 yards, both found the end zone again this week, giving the two of them 7 combined scores in the last 2 games. With Watson's ability to move in the pocket, it seems like he can find someone on every play. In other news, the Browns are still terrible. Questions moving forward: Lamar Miller and Deonta Foreman basically split the carries for Houston in the backfield, getting 15 and 12 respectively. Was this just game flow, or is Foreman creeping into Miller's touch count on a permanent basis? On the Cleveland side, is either Isaiah Crowell or Duke Johnson a viable starter moving forward? It seems like they're behind too much to give any running back a consistent chance to shine. Neither guy broke 60 yards this week.
Washington 26, San Fran 24. Key stat lines: Kirk Cousins threw for 330 yards, 2 touchdowns, and 1 interception, with Chris Thompson catching 4 balls for 105, but Jordan Reed only catching 4 for 37, and Terrell Pryor only pulling in 3 for 23 yards. They both suck. Brian Hoyer was pulled for sucking and was replaced by household name CJ Beathard, who threw for 245 yards, a touchdown, and a pick. Carlos Hyde rushed for a pathetic 28 yards on 13 carries, but found the end zone twice. Thrilling for his fantasy owners. Pierre Garçon had 5 catches for 55 yards, and Hyde added another 5 catches for 47. Biggest takeaways: Chris Thompson, with 20 total touches, seems to be the guy the Redskins are trying to run their offense around. Although this offense was pretty bad, 16 carries for 33 yards. His big playability is undeniable. It seems like he's here to stay. Questions moving forward: is Matt Breida the heir apparent in the San Fran backfield? Not quite yet. Amidst the rumors circulating that Kyle Shanahan wants to move Carlos Hyde, Hyde still tripled Breida's opportunities on Sunday, getting 18 offensive touches to Breida's 6.
New England 24, New York Jets 17. Tom Brady went 20 for 38, 257 yards, 2 touchdowns, and an interception, completing 6 passes for 83 yards and 2 touchdowns to Rob Gronkowski, 6 passes for 93 yards to Brandon Cooks, and only 1 pass for 19 yards to the usually productive Chris Hogan. The Patriots' backfield became a little more muddled as Dion Lewis made an appearance, rushing 11 times for 52 yards and a touchdown, while Mike Gillislee ran 10 times for 44 yards. On the Jets side, Josh McCown had a solid game, throwing for 354 yards, 2 scores, and 2 picks. Roto Street Journal favorite Austin Safarian-Jenkins had 8 catches for 46 yards and a touchdown and had another score reversed on a highly dubious replay call. Matt Forte had 8 catches for 59 yards, and Jeremy Curley had a couple catches for 61 yards and a score, although we doubt that helped anyone outside of Jeremy Curley's family. Biggest takeaways, the Jets can't run the ball, 21 carries for 53 yards, especially in the absence of Bilal Powell, but are nowhere near as bad as we thought they would be before the season. Gronk remains the centerpiece of an always dangerous Patriots passing game, although Brandon Cooks is starting to weasel his way into a prominent role as well. Questions moving forward: is the traditionally unpredictable Patriots backfield going to make a guy like Mike Gillislee hard to start as he splits carries with the likes of Deion Lewis and James White? Is the Patriots defense going to actually become a unit you go out of your way to start players against?
Chicago 27, Baltimore 24 in OT. Key stat line, not much passing in this one. Mitch Trubisky went 8 for 16 for 113 yards and a touchdown, and Joe Flacco was even worse. 24 for 41 for 180, no touchdowns and 2 picks. Two quarterbacks combined passer rating, 45.2. Disgusting. Jordan Howard was a monster on the ground, rushing 36 times for 167 yards for the Bears. Alex Collins ran 15 times for 74 yards, while Buck Allen ran 10 times for 49 for the Ravens. Zach Miller and household name Deion Sims each caught a TD pass for the Bears. But wait, I thought Trubisky only threw 1 TD. That's right. Tariq Cohen threw a touchdown as well, making him without question the best quarterback who played this game on Sunday. Biggest takeaways: the reports of Jordan Howard's demise have been greatly exaggerated. 36 carries for 167 yards is not the stat line of a guy who is in danger of losing his job to Tariq Cohen, Benny Cunningham, or anyone else. Questions moving forward: is there any conceivable reason for the Ravens to keep employing Joe Flacco after this season? Sure, he won a Super Bowl, but that was like a million years ago. If the Ravens go all in on the running game, which they should, is Alex Collins going to be the guy to own? Today, he held the edge 60-40 over Buck Allen as far as carries.
New Orleans 52, Detroit 38. Matt Stafford went 25 for 52 and 312 yards, 3 touchdowns, and 3 picks, full stat line, while Drew Brees put up a surprisingly low 186 yards, 2 touchdown, and 2 interception game, considering his team scored 52 points. Mark Ingram had an impressive 114 yards and 2 scores on a solid 25 carries. Alvin Kamara chipped in 10 carries for a cool 75 yards. Ted Ginn Jr. and Michael Humana-Wanawahu Wani, say that 3 times fast, each scored touchdowns for the Saints. Mike Thomas had a disappointing 3 catches for a meager 11 yards, and Willie Snead had a catch for 11 yards in his return. For the Lions, Amir Abdullah carried 14 times for 54 yards. Marvin Jones and Golden Tate each received for 96 yards and a touchdown. Biggest takeaways: the Lions are a fraud as an actual football team, but that is not fantasy. Matt Stafford's considerable production came, as it always does, when his team was already hopelessly buried. They were down 45-10 early in the third quarter. This is when Stafford does his best work, which, if you're talking about fantasy, which we are, still makes him a highly viable option. Questions moving forward: is Marvin Jones back as a legit starting wide receiver too? And is Willie Snead going to work his way into fantasy relevance?
Miami 20, Atlanta 17. Key stats: Smokin' Jay Cutler dazzled us all, going 19 for 33, amassing 151 yards, 2 TDs, and a pick. Mr. MVP Matt Ryan threw for 248, a touchdown, and an interception. Alleged workhorse Jay Ajayi earned that title this week, rushing 26 times for 130 yards for the Dolphins, while Devonta Freeman ran 9 times for 68 yards for the Falcons. His backfield partner Tevin Coleman ran 9 times for 32 yards, but did find the end zone. For Miami, Jarvis Landry had 8 catches for 62 yards and a touchdown, and was targeted a whopping 14 times. Kenny Stills had 4 catches for 49 and a TD, and Julio Jones had 6 catches for 72 and disappeared into the crowd once again. Quite a feat for someone as talented as him. If you were a fantasy owner of Marvin Hall, he caught Matt Ryan's lone touchdown pass for Atlanta. Also, if you're claiming you own Marvin Hall, you're a fucking liar. Big takeaways: Jay Ajayi can still run the ball. His usage was really encouraging too. Over 25 carries for the second week in a row. It seemed like the Falcons missed Mohamed Sanu on their side of the ball, as Devontae Parker was also inactive for the Dolphins with an ankle injury. Questions moving forward: what is wrong with the Falcons? Don't forget, they should have lost to the Bears a few weeks back too, and in particular, Julio Jones. Should you sell or look to buy low given his unquestionable upside? Hell, should you get rid of Matt Ryan too? And why the hell didn't they run Devonta Freeman more? He averaged like 7.5 yards a carry. Not too shabby.
Minnesota 23, Green Bay 10. Rodgers was injured too early to do anything. Brett Hundley went 18 for 33 for 157 yards, a touchdown, and 3 picks. As his replacement, probably you don't need to go pick him off waivers. Aaron Jones and Ty Montgomery split carries for the Packers with neither guy lighting the world on fire. Jordy Nelson had 6 catches for 60 yards. Devontae Adams had 5 catches for 54 yards and the Packers' lone score. Jerick McKinnon had 16 carries for 69 yards and a score and added 5 catches for 30 yards and another score. Adam Thielen was the focal point of the Minnesota passing game in the absence of Stephon Diggs, catching 9 balls for 97 yards. Biggest takeaway, the only thing anyone is going to remember about this game is that Aaron Rodgers is probably out for the season with a broken collarbone. Without Rodgers, the Packers are no better than an average team, in my opinion. On the Vikings side, Jerick McKinnon and Latavius Murray split the carries, but McKinnon was the far more effective runner. Look for McKinnon to swallow up more and more of the workload as the season goes on. Questions moving forward. How bad a hit is this for every offensive player on the Packers as a result of this Rodgers injury? Jordy Nelson, Devontae Adams, Ty Montgomery, go on down the line. They could all be shells of their former fantasy selves moving forward.
Arizona 38, Tampa Bay 33. Key stats. Carson Palmer had an extremely efficient passing game, going 18 for 22 for 283 yards, 3 touchdowns, and 1 interception. Those Bucs suck. His counterpart, Ryan Fitzpatrick, threw for 290 yards, 3 TDs, and 2 picks, while replacing Jameis Winston, who went out with a shoulder injury fairly early on. Adrian Peterson, carried 26 times for 134 yards and 2 scores in a statement return game as a primary back. On the other side, Doug Martin ran for 14 times, 53 yards, and a score. Jaquiz Rodgers seemed to be almost completely out of the offensive plan, running 3 times for 1 yard. In the air, the ageless Larry Fitzgerald had 10 catches on 11 targets for 138 and a touchdown, and John Brown went 63 and a score. On the Bucs side, Mike Evans had 3 catches for 95 and a TD. Cameron Brate went 6 for 76 and a score, and Deshaun Jackson got in the act too, catching 3 balls for 38 and a touchdown as well. Biggest takeaway, a revitalized Adrian Peterson may have arrived in Arizona, so look the fuck out. It was clear watching AP this week that he still had something left in the tank, and the Cardinals seemed ready to give him the ball early and often. Peterson may well have gone from a completely obsolete fantasy player to an RB1 in the space of a week. Congrats if you bought low on him or grabbed him off waivers going into the game. And the questions moving forward, how serious is Winston's injury, and how much will it matter if he's out for a little while? Fitzpatrick managed scores for Evans, Brate, and Deshaun Jackson through the air, so maybe it won't be a big deal. We'll find out.
Pittsburgh 19, KC 13. Ben Roethlisberger went 17 of 25 passing for 252 yards, 1 touchdown and 1 interception for the Steelers. Alex Smith had easily his worst statistical game of the year, going 19 for 34 for 246 yards and a touchdown. Le'Veon Bell rushed 35 times for 179 yards and a touchdown, while Kareem Hunt had a fantasy-crushing game, running the ball 9 times for only 21 yards, although he did redeem himself through the air with 5 catches going for 89 yards. Travis Kelce and Tyreek Hill both had disappointing games receiving for the Chiefs, going for 37 and 34 yards respectively. On the Steelers side, the matchup-proof Antonio Brown pulled in 8 balls for 155 yards and a score. Martavis Bryant caught 2 balls for 27 yards, and multiple rumors that he wants out of Pittsburgh surfaced after the game. Biggest takeaway is Le'Veon Bell is still the best player in fantasy. He had 35 total touches and over 190 total yards. I know there's been talk on this podcast of Kareem Hunt being the guy to take if they're a fantasy redraft with the number 1 pick, but it's Bell, let's face it. With Roethlisberger clearly having lost a step or two, the Steelers are going to have to lean on Bell, so expect him to pile up fantasy points at a furious clip as long as he stays healthy. Questions moving forward, should you sell Martavis Bryant or hope he resurfaces as a wide receiver 1, maybe on another team?
Los Angeles Chargers 17, Oakland 16. Key stats, Phillip Rivers went 25 for 36 for 268 yards and a score in an extremely unsexy fantasy game, while Derek Carr went 21 of 30 for only 171 yards, a touchdown, and 2 interceptions, even less sexy. Melvin Gordon had a phenomenal game, rushing 25 for 83 and a TD, while adding 9 catches, 67, and another score. Beast. Hunter Henry had an encouraging 5 for 90 game, and Keenan Allen caught 5 for 45, disappearing in the second half. Marshawn Lynch rushed 13 times for 63 yards for the Raiders, but Cordarrelle Patterson scored their lone rushing touchdown, running 3 times for 55 and a score. Crabtree led the Raiders in targets, catches, and yards, going 6 for 52 and a score, while Cooper caught 5 passes, 28 yards, and another nothing performance. Biggest takeaway, Melvin Gordon is a fantasy monster when you couple his obvious running with his receiving upside. The Raiders, once considered a clear-cut fantasy juggernaut, are now a team filled with players you probably spent a lot on that you're scared to start. Questions moving forward, is Amari Cooper even relevant? It seems Crabtree has supplanted him as the top option in the air. Can the pendulum ever swing back, or is this it? Is Ty Williams even worth starting anymore for the Chargers? He only had 3 catches for 27 and a fumble in another series of lousy fantasy performances.
New York Giants 23, Denver 10. Eli Manning went 11 for 19, totaling 128 yards and a touchdown. Orleans Darkwa rushed 21 times for 117 yards, and Evan Ingram caught 5 balls for 82 yards and a score for the Giants, who pulled off the upset of the day with all due respect to the Miami Dolphins. Trevor Siemian passed for 376 yards, a touchdown, and 2 picks for the Broncos in a game that was pretty bad in reality, but totally serviceable as a fantasy outing. C.J. Anderson ran the ball 9 times for a pathetic 17 yards. Demaryius Thomas had an impressive game, receiving 10 catches for a $133. Biggest takeaway is the Giants are still terrible, but if Denver can't run the ball and Siemian is going to turn it over, all bets are off. Orleans Darkwa looked like the best Giants running back in like 10 years. Also, we got to see Brock Osweiler for a minute or two at the end of the first half, so that was a treat. Questions moving forward. Is the Broncos offense just nowhere near as good as we thought, or is the Giants defense better than we thought? Is C.J. Anderson just keeping the seat warm for Jamal Charles in the Denver backfield? And that is going to do it. I know that was probably closer to like 12, 13, 14 minutes. But that's your highlights. That's like, what was the time, Wolf?
15 minutes, 9 seconds.